We're all familiar by now with the accusation of the use of chemical weapons by the Assad government, and that the accusation that they've been used is very suspicious evidence. In fact, just significant enough to say that the entire, alleged incidents were faked. Well, that's why the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons was sent to investigate one of these incidents in 2018. Now, as a result of this, they ended up writing a report. That report was kind of vague. It suggests, but also doesn't suggest, that the Assad government used chemical weapons, although most people take it to say that it did. Now, as you recall, previously there were people inside the OPCW who came forward saying that there are discrepancies inside the actual official report which contradict their findings. Well, now an internal email from inside the company from one person to another has been leaked via WikiLeaks, which shows that the actual final report was doctored and did not coincide with the findings of the actual scientists on the ground. Now, the OPC email indicates that the Chemical Weapons Watchdog leadership filed a report on the 2018 Duma incident to essentially make it so that it falls in line with imperialist policy, the policy that's coming through by the Western countries, and that it was an attack by the Syrian government. Now, of course, as I said, this came out through WikiLeaks and has been a major development in the ongoing accusations against the Assad government, which has basically been stonewalled by the mainstream media, pretending as though it doesn't exist. Now, this alleged chemical attack was the justification for three NATO allies to unleash a barrage of cruise missiles on the country, as the claim that they were using chemical weapons was used as the pretext for doing so. On April 2018, a chemical attack was reported in Duma, Syria, with dozens of civilians allegedly killed. The Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons sent a fact-finding mission to the site, although the inspection was stalled by fighting between radical jihadists who controlled Duma at the time of the incident and the Syrian government forces. Nevertheless, the evidence was eventually collected by the OPCW, which produced a report that all but pinned the blame for the attack on Damascus. And now what this new internal email that has been leaked shows is that the management of the organization, the higher ups within the organization, not the ground level investigators, the scientists, etc., but the management was politically motivated and seriously modified their document, totally omitting facts that didn't fit the anti-Assad narrative and misreported others in order to fit it. One objection related to saying that the team discovered sufficient evidence that chlorine gas was likely released from two cylinders found at two locations in Duma. The actual evidence pointed to the presence of one or several chlorine-containing chemicals. It might have been the gas, but it also very well been something like chlorine-based bleach. Another complaint was about overstating the levels of chlorinated organic derivatives found in the environment. They were, in most cases, presented only in parts per billion range, as low as 1 to 2 points per billion, which is essentially trace quantities, the email states. Now, the inspectors who wrote the original report purposely emphasized that though it may be the case they found sufficient evidence to affirm the theory, it is possible the error was simply a typo, that the major deviation from the original report, in other words, that's kind of their excuse. Now, one of the major omissions from the actual report, the inconsistency between the victim's symptoms reported by witnesses shown in the footage of the purported attack taken by the actual terrorist forces, and those of people affected by chlorine gas are supposed to have. In other words, what is scientifically known to be the effects of a chlorine gas attack aren't consistent with what was reported by the victims and what was shown in the alleged footage of the actual incidents. And they dropped a whole section that had a serious negative impact report. This section was inextricably linked to the chemical agent identified. So there was a whole huge proof that shows that this was a lie. This was a psyop. This was a faked chemical attack by the terrorist forces inside of Syria that are allied to the United States, the UK, and to a degree Israel and Saudi Arabia. and shows that this was faked. Once it became clear that a necessary investigation needed to come out, it was falsified in order to justify imperialist hostility against the country. But again, we find the mainstream media completely looking the other way, just completely unable to cover this whatsoever. You would think something as significant as this would be covered. And the fact that to date, WikiLeaks has not been wrong about anything that it has released, which does make WikiLeaks very credible, more credible than the mainstream media even. So once again, we are finding more and more information that we are being fed misinformation to justify a war on this country, to justify a war on Syria, and now finding President Trump saying that we're sending forces to the country merely to protect the oil. If that wasn't enough, straight up, to tell you this whole thing was a complete fabrication to justify stealing the resources of Syria, then nothing else will. This alone, this report showing that it was actually faked in order to slander the Syrian government, is enough. And then Trump sending forces specifically, under his own words, to capture the oil fields. If that isn't enough to tell you that the war is based on a lie, that U.S. foreign policy is based on a lie and the attempted theft of Syria's resources, then frankly nothing is going to change your mind. Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.